And we are live with another round of the TouchDesigner Roundtable from Berlin, but with an international audience. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm happy to have a lot of interesting guests here tonight, and also you in the YouTube and in the Twitch chats, and I hope you will talk to us here in the studio. But let me first introduce our lovely guests. You see them here on my right there. So first I want to introduce our two co-hosts to you. So here we have Wieland Tilker. I'll quickly make this big. Wieland's gonna be in the YouTube chat, and you may know him as this guy. Right. Alpha Moonbase. He's a provider of many interesting tools, Python tips and tips and tricks. He makes controllers, BPM detectors, and I'm personally a huge fan of his preset system. So Wieland, how are you doing today? Do I have to turn your audio on? Wieland, you're silent. Well, maybe while Wieland gets his game on, I'll introduce you to the other chat host, which is Carlos Serrano. Hello, Carlos. How are you doing? Oh, you're very silent. Huh? No, my monitoring was wrong. You're perfectly fine. Great. Hey, Carlos. Yeah, I'm a bit excited. Live. Yeah, Carlos is originally from Colombia, but now we're very happy that he's here in Berlin with all his talents. I heard you already run a company in Colombia before you came to Germany to study, Carlos. Is that true?
To do my master.
Cool, so I was just checking the audio. I hope the audio is right on the stream. Yeah, great. And I hear you are working on a website. We weren't sure if it would be live by now. Should we check?
I think it's not live still.
It's not live. Well, in that case, you may know Carlos from Instagram, where he recently made these beautiful swarm animations. Where did you get the inspiration for that?
From the swarm animations.
Cool.
Who knows?
So, then thank you, Carlos. He's there in Twitch, and you can ask him anything. And not only can you ask, also we have the next time already the 10th edition of the TouchDesigner Roundtable, which is a celebration, I guess. So if you got anything that you would like to show and present the next time, just tell the people in the chat, and we'll be happy to talk to you the next time. Okay, but further guests that we have today, I'm going here with the order of appearance. So here we have Jelena and Eve from Munich, Studio Tisch. They're gonna start with the first presentation. How are you guys doing?
Fine, thank you.
Pretty good.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes.
Great. Cool. Looking forward to your presentation. Then we have Markus Heckmann.
Hello.
Hello, Markus.
I'm here. Yes, good to see you too.
You guys.
So you're gonna bring us some news from the derivative headquarter? I suppose?
Yes. At the end of the whole thing, I think. Yep.
Oh, almost the end. Almost the end.
Oh,
He's
almost.
close
Sorry,
before.
just before.
We've got another guest, and it's David Brüll. Hello, David.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have David here at the roundtable because usually he's always hanging around at the roundtables because David and I run here the Node Institute. But it's the first time that he's a presenter in our round, and he's got some special news for us, which we're gonna talk about at the end of this show. So stay tuned for David and the Node Forum. And last but not least, we have Christopher Bauder. I've just seen him.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you.
He's in voice. Hello Christopher.
Hi.
It's a big pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I'm very much looking forward to your presentation later. So thank you all for coming. And yeah, Studio Tisch from Munich. I've met Yves in Geneva at the mapping festival at a TouchDesigner workshop, and I think I managed to make him even more love the software. So we also made a nice little project together this year, and we already presented a TouchDesigner workshop in Munich at Studio Tisch. That's them.
What about Mickey?
Mickey is there too. He's presenting as well, no?
Mickey. I just don't see everybody here on this thing.
Well, we see you.
And the surprise for last.
Well,
Last but not least.
last and then still not least, Mickey van Ols. Hello, Mickey.
Hey.
The fun thing is that basically I just have to turn around to see Mickey, but it's a bit surreal. Okay, so well, you see we have at least 5 meters distance. So thank you, Mickey, for coming. Okay, enough introductions, I think. I'm excited to hear from Studio Tisch what they have been preparing for us.
Okay, so we start sharing the screen, right?
Yeah, I think.
Guys, I have a big problem. Sorry. I need to relocate and I'm back online in 10 minutes. Sorry about that. My presentation seems to be corrupted.
Okay.
So, but go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Okay, so do you see our screen now, or?
Yeah.
Stefan, it would be really lovely if you could turn over the smoke effect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please. It's very smoky. Our mic is on. Everyone can hear us. All is good, right? Okay. So I'll just start talking and someone tell me if something happens. Okay, so pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us. Thank you, Stefan, and everyone else involved. And good evening. Okay, so this is Studio Tisch talking, and well, to begin, I'd like to say what Tisch stands for. It's really very simple. It's technology, imagination, spaces, and humans. Myself and Yves met in New York. I was working at Fake Love, and Yves was working at Hush Studios in Brooklyn. I was a strategist, and he was a creative director. And we got to work on many amazing clients, and somehow along the way, we decided to go back to Munich and open our shop here and combine our skill sets and see what happens. Why did we do that? The reason is because we hate advertising. But having said that, our background is in advertising. So as much as we hate ads in general, but not in particular, we knew that there's a lot to learn from our background and from strategic communications, the rules of engagement, the consumer behavior, and so on. So experiential design is something we both fell in love with because it offers a kind of a different perspective to old advertising and traditional one-way communication. So for this presentation, you can expect to, this talk today, you can expect to hear more on that. And I'm gonna move to the next slide, which says something about what we do. So we define ourselves as an experiential design in our collective, but what we do is essentially creating experiences for what we call the age of environment to human communication. And our job is to create meaningful moments of, meaningful being the important word here, moments of engagement between people and brand, companies and places. So in order to do that, we knew we had to understand what makes people tick, because yeah, we figured that people don't care about logos and ads or advertising in general. And the reason they don't is because they've tasted power. And what I mean by that is that the advent of the internet and social media has forever changed the way we consume, whether it's content or food, it doesn't matter. So the communication is pretty much a two-way street now, not a one-way channel. And there are many brands that understand that that people today exist both in physical and digital worlds where we have our curated personas. So as humans, we no longer toggle between physical and digital, which is why we said, okay, our job is to blend physical and digital in a seamless way. What else? There's another reason why we love experiential design, and it has to do with providing. It provides an amazing playground to connect physical and digital. So, okay, let's move on to the next slide. So how do we connect physical and digital is by using these 5 disciplines to create environments that communicate. We use and abuse these 5 disciplines. So design, yes, it involves the orchestration of typography, color, imagery, form, technology, and content. Then there's art. This is not to say that we are artists, but more that we have an artistic approach in what we do. Then there's technology, which is actually a tool that enhances storytelling in this regard. Most of the times, across all our projects, technology has been an integral part, but we don't use technology for technology's sake. We use it as a design tool, which is like this magical thing that brings a dead object to life, or that changes something from a state from passive to active. Then there's strategy, which is what we constantly insist on. It's as I mentioned before, our job is to create moments of engagement between people and brands, between companies and places. So in order to do that, we have to understand what makes people tick. And we have to have a certain goal in mind, like solving a client's particular communication challenge or objective. So that's the part, I guess that's the part that simply cannot happen without strategy. And then there's production, which is to say that our studio actually is capable of choreographing a project from concept, from conception to execution. Moving on. I'm not moving on. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you were.
Sure. Right. So, and these are the industries that need our services. I would say that architecture is a discipline, not just an industry, because we sometimes collaborate with architectural designers to bring the spatial vision to life. Sorry. What else? There's anything from temporary brand or product or campaign activations which fall into the brand category. Then there's pop-up retail spaces, and these can happen literally anywhere. So in the end, we also did like art installations at museums and cultural institutions. We don't say that we do events, but sometimes events require our particular expertise. So I guess this slide is kind of a helpful exercise if you're a young studio or designer to define these areas. I'm not saying that this is a fact or this is the way to go, but it's like it helps to keep you focused. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about our process, because I said in the beginning that we insist on strategy, and this is something that makes a difference in what we do, and for us at least in particular. So it goes all the way from discovery to results. Like there's a workshop at the beginning. It happens every time we work with a client. And ideally, at the end, we can track and analyze what happened. So surprise, surprise, it doesn't always happen. It depends on the client and it depends on the project, the tracking part. But mostly it's reserved for brand and product and campaign activations. But it's important because it not only tells the client that the project was successful or not, it also elevates the installation from a nice to have to a must have, because for the client at least, it justifies the return on investment. So I guess the strategic part starts with the discovery, which includes workshop, and then there's brand immersion part where we look at the competitive landscape and define what the brand is, what it stands for, what the values are. We do a lot of qualitative research in this part, which sometimes involves interviews, sometimes not. Then we build audience profiles. And I think like creative and content strategy are also important part here. Some studios who are more art oriented argue that this limits creativity. But in our view, it's important because it's the only way to create something that can spark engagement with a demographic that the client is trying to reach out to or make friends with. So you need to know who you're talking to and what you're trying to accomplish. So yeah, this is who we are and how we operate. So we're passionate about building and actually finding new ways to connect technology, spaces, and humans to create honest experiences that deliver results for our clients. And I will hand the mic over now to my better half. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so we thought, okay, we're gonna maybe show just a couple of examples of the sort of work, and maybe we also thought explaining the process a little bit. Yes, this is a TouchDesigner Roundtable, and we get to that later a little bit, as Stefan already introduced that, or he introduced me more or less to TouchDesigner and kindly invited also Markus Heckmann to our office in Munich, but we come to that later. So the first project I quickly want to go into is for, as you can see, the logo, everybody knows it, Instagram. I was working as a design director for Hush Studios in Brooklyn, in New York. And that's where we met, or the other studio in New York anyways. And so we were working on a permanent installation for Instagram. They opened a new office in the Fremont building in San Francisco, which you see here on the right. And the idea was basically the task was to create a installation which is ever changing, which also is interesting for the visitors, but also engaging for the workers, but also interesting, or can fulfill some tasks for clients if they invite them. So Instagram has this. All their offices, they always have these photo moments, right? Naturally, but they were all analog. So in North America, they have these backdrops, quite elaborate, and they would change them every 3 months. And we wanted to create something digital, but yet physical to, not to be able to have something ever changing and fulfill some tasks. So the idea was, we asked ourselves, what if, you could literally walk through your Instagram post, basically. So we called the idea Inside Instagram as a working title. And we looked at the location, and it's the lobby entrance area. And so we decided to create this kind of light forest where you could walk through and display in a cut-up way. You have to imagine these columns you see in the background as a screen where your Instagram post or a curated content is basically cut up and then put into space. So this way they could have something, the workers could choose content. They could put on content for clients when, for example, Nike was visiting them or something like that. They could play even commercials from them and so on. So it would be ever changing. And at nighttime, because Instagram has brand colors, as you saw in the picture in the first slide, at nighttime you could see it from the Fremont Park. It was, clearly the Instagram office. So this was, a few renderings and so on. And we went through the process, which had many iterations. These are just a few of them. So we really explored the space of how could we, create an, immersive experience. Obviously, there were, to go through the whole process would take too long. This was the final idea to create these light columns and to show the content on it. And this was a process of about, just the ideation process was about 4 weeks. We had a team of about 10 people, designers, graphic designers, creative directors, me, and creative technologists to really come up with validated ideas. And there was, of course, many, and we had the discussions with the client for a very long time. And in the end, it came out like this. So, Stefan, I think you have the link, which you can play.
Yeah, give me a second.
So I just talk a little bit towards it. I don't know if there's sound, but it's not necessary. So you can see that these columns, so we created in the end, it was like a juxtaposed forest of light in a sense. These light columns, they were also touch sensitive. So you could touch each column and sort of reveal the content from column to column even more once you're standing inside it, like this lovely ladies doing there. And you'll see in a second also how this whole thing worked. So there were several displays in the space where you could actually choose curated content, which was obviously official due to privacy reasons and so on. And if you would stand in a certain, here you can see it, you know, there was content in the foreground, and you see how it plays out on the light columns in the background. And if you would stand in a certain angle, you could actually, you know, kind of notice this, you know, what content is being played. And obviously, one of the major important part was it needed to have Instagrammable moments. I mean, I can't hear it anymore because everybody wants to have it, but for Instagram, I guess it's pretty legit too. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, that's this project. Then the second one, which was also for a project in California. It was in San Jose. It was for the Tech Museum of Innovation. It was a sort of competition where they wanted to bring together tech companies like Silicon Valley tech companies and artists. And the theme of the exhibition, which is going on for a year, was water. And it was basically, that was the brief. So there was no specific thing, except that we have to choose a list of companies, of tech companies from the Silicon Valley. So we decided to work together with a company called Plantronics, which is a sound company. They do like soundscapes for offices and so on, but they also produce their own speakers and Leap Motion. So what we did, the idea was to create a to sensibilize the people to water as a medium, and to interact digitally with a real-time water surface. And this would actually, each wave and each movement, that the height of the waves and so on, would create a sound. So we worked, this project was made with 4V, not TouchDesigner, 4V, but as we, I guess.
Sorry,
it's and also, we worked with Mio Leclerc from Walls Binaire, and with Kling Klang Klong, who did the sound to this. And it was a process for about, this whole project went about, I would say, for half a year or something, was the production on this. And due to these times, like we do it right now, we never actually went to the location. We were never there. We did everything remote. And had a team, of course, of the at the.
Why is he showing? I'm sorry to interrupt, Stefan.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it played on in the background, and I had to bring it to the foreground to stop it. Okay. You just see it with delay in the stream. It's going to be in order in a second.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so what we did, we created this digital real-time water surface again, which would talk to the sound system, which was done in Max MSP. And as just said, you know, every single interaction you would do with your hand in Leap Motion would first of all create waves, of course, and then create a sound or different sound worlds. Just here to explain a little bit of the process. So on the top left, it was just like finding a sort of visual style in the first place. And we spent a lot of time doing, how does it move? Do we make it realistic, but, not too realistic, and, to give it a little bit of an artistic feel to it. Then on the top right, after we've kind of finished with that, we started to with the interaction with the Leap Motion. How fast do you move your hand? How do the waves behave? If you go up and down with your hand, you create higher waves, slower waves, faster waves, and so on. Then visually on the bottom left, we started to create different color schemes, which were actually like a time-based. So it would have a different lighting situation depending on the time. So, and one day would go in, I can't remember, I think it was 10 minutes or something, it was 24 hours. And yeah, you can see that on the right. And there will be some sound now on the bottom right. Now there is what happened then with the interaction with this. I don't know if you can hear it, but. And we had about 5 different sound worlds. So basically the sound world would change every time somebody would not interact with it. We would come back to a sort of idle mode. And then as soon as somebody would interact with it again, we would enter a new sound world. So we had about, each sound world had about 15 instrumentation, if I'm not totally mistaken. And, you know, we would create all these different worlds basically. So it would also be different when each person, if different people are interacting at different daytimes, it will always look different and always sound different as well. Here you see the setup as said, since we haven't been there ourselves on location, we were working very closely with the museum staff, and they, you know, did also renderings or, you know, like spaces like themselves. And this was how it basically set out to be. The film we're going to show now is also not shot at the location. We do have some footage from that, but it was, to be honest, the museum staff, they are not filmmakers, and it didn't turn out to be, you know, like we wish to be. Not saying that they're very nice and really made an effort.
It was one of our best clients.
Yeah, they were very nice, and really, it was a great. It's a great example how you can really work completely remotely, and that was a nice process, really. So, yeah, Stefan, if you
Stefan hit it.
Yeah, I will start the movie, and then afterwards, I think we should go to the Q&A.
Yeah.
The audience.
So that's the end.
Okay.
sound, but anyways, you heard in the first example how it sounds.
Okay, same problem as before. Stop it. Okay, I'll be back.
Yeah. Okay, and that was it. Thank you very much for listening.
Bye.
Goodbye. Well, thank you for the nice presentation. I find it always quite interesting to, you know, look behind the scenes, how our project's actually coming to life, because as a TouchDesigner developer, you may end up often only at the end. So yeah, how could you transfer that experience that you made in New York to the south side?
What? Come again?
How could you take these? How could you transfer the experiences that you made in New York to the clientele that you have now in Germany? Did you find it quite different, or is it basically the same game?
Well, our clients are not very different because even though we're based in Munich, we still work globally with clients and creative people around the world. The reason we moved to Munich was because we wanted to make Munich great again.
Okay,
No chance.
let's hope that not many people from Munich hear that, because they're pretty sure that it's great already.
Yeah. No, the problem is that all the people, the good ones from Munich, the creative ones, are now in Berlin. So we have to soon go to Berlin.
But yeah, I mean, Yves is a local. He's been living here for
A long time.
the majority of your life. But yeah, I moved together with Yves a year and a half ago, and I was surprised, to say the least. I didn't know what to expect. But Munich is an amazing city that offers a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of clients here, and there's also a lot of creative people here. Yeah, a little bit hidden. You have to dig, but once you find them, it's amazing. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I was happy to find you in Munich. But yeah, let's see if we have questions from the audience. Wieland, what does the confused YouTube crowd say?
Yeah, we still have at least 7 people waiting for the stream to start, but we have 12 people at least watching on the working stream. But no questions from here except Isabel asking about the smoke effect, but this is already a little bit older, the question. So yeah, nothing new here on YouTube. So giving over to Twitch, I think.
So, yeah, here in Twitch, they're saying, what was the response of the companies when they got in front of this?
I'm looking at that question, and I'm not sure I understand it. What was the response of the companies when they got in front of this? They were blown out of their minds. Well, for the example of the Instagram project, the client was very happy, as I've learned from you guys working at Hush, because again, it was a long and iterative process that started with establishing a lot of things in the beginning. It had a very bulletproof strategy, and every time along the process, as you kept going back to or having questions, like, because the strategy was so soundproof, bulletproof, everything was moving on.
Yeah, it always based basically, we work with presentations, and we broke each iteration of the presentation. There was only one, and so the client could always look into it. We had many discussions with them, and there was a lot of conversations with them also, so that the process was very collaborative, and I think that made the process quite smooth.
Result.
Yeah.
And for the museum example, the process was similar in a way that the client knew what to expect. So at the end, everything went on smoothly, and someone says that the audio is very low on Twitch. Can you guys help?
Yeah, okay. I will try to help with the audio, but we also a bit at the end of your presentation. But I had a chat with Yves, and he promised that he's gonna show and say a thing about his Instagram TouchDesigner experiments.
So yeah.
So we have something about TouchDesigner. So
So I looked at it, it's almost exactly a year ago when I started TouchDesigner. And I'm just gonna share my screen. Is it, can you see?
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna quickly go through it. So basically a year ago, I started making tutorials like everyone else, I guess.
Well, you gave yourself a challenge.
Oh yeah, and the first thing is like, how do you learn software? And I was quite inspired by a lot of doing some research on TouchDesigner. You know, there was quite a lot of people doing these daily challenges. So I thought, that's a good idea to start learning by doing a sketch every day somehow. Doing tutorials and so on. And yeah, that's basically how I sort of got to TouchDesigner and learned to love it. And then I went also to Stefan's workshop in Geneva, where I also learned some more. And it kind of went that. And it was like this 100-day, I gave myself 100-day challenge because a lot of people went like 1 year every day. I thought it was a bit too much. And I said, okay, every week, a working day. So not on the weekends, because then it would have got out of hand because quickly you get so lost in this whole thing. So I'm just gonna show the very first TouchDesigner I did. Was playing around with LEDs. After I did the workshop from Ben Voigt and Marcus, actually, on LED mapping. So that's my very first one. And then, you know, moving on a little bit, going up here. This was the night before I did the workshop with Stefan. I started to play around with particle systems. And, you know, just like very simple stuff, but, you know. And then I found great inspiration by a guy called Polyhop, Simon Alexander Adams. He did great tutorials, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff here. Also this, some inspiration, which then came, car wash, which came then a little bit too later, you know, inspired like later stuff, which is more interactive. Then this guy is our CEO. He's our dog. He's very cute.
Made with TouchDesigner.
Made with TouchDesigner. Then, you know, a lot of people, I'm not at all into this, but like GLSL also tried to do some workshops on this one. Matthew Reagan is also a great resource for learning TouchDesigner. Then started to play around with you know, sound reactive stuff, you know, progressing a little bit, and then, you know, playing around with interactive. This was with Leap Motion, for example, you know, trying to create something which is somehow interactive. Then we moved on a little bit to, I moved on to playing around with Kinect, which was a lot of fun. It's very basic, you know, the, the bubble guy. And yeah, and different things. Also, this one was for Leap Motion, playing around with like, you know, the sub, a spring sub and lines. And here again, also an iteration of what I just showed, also with Leap Motion, you know, just exploring, really. I mean, that's the great thing about TouchDesigner. It's just endless. And I have to say, learning TouchDesigner, the learning curve is like super steep until you hit the wall. That's at least my experience, because at one point, you know,
the wall is called GLSL.
Yeah, and Python. But I think it's a great tool without, you know, even without, because I'm a creative director, I'm not a creative technologist, but even without knowing to code, you can really achieve great results. This was also basically for an LED installation idea. This would actually work as an LED installation, which is great, because it's, first of all, it's visualized like a Möbius strip, but you could actually, you know, if you would, if I would have, I don't know how many, like I think it was 100 LED strips, then it would actually work like that. And then we kind of looked into more stuff like,
started getting more elaborate.
more elaborate, playing around with different techniques and
So how
textures.
long would you say did it take you to be comfortable?
What's that?
How long did it take you to feel comfortable with TouchDesigner?
I think it was about maybe about two months or something. First of all, I did a lot of tutorials in the beginning. I was just like, I felt so stupid, because it was like, oh my god, I don't understand this. This is I never learned it, but at one point it really worked, and you understand it at one moment. It's like learning a language, I guess. This is a great tutorial for Marcus as well. Doing top particles, point cloud, working on point cloud and displacing that. So it's sometimes I also like to put stuff into perspective, because it's nice to just see. This was done with Cinema 4D in context, just to see how patches would look like, maybe like in an art gallery or something.
So art galleries, watch out.
Yeah.
I don't want to be unpolite, but we're running a bit out of time.
Yeah, no, it's not a
One thing I just wanted to show is a project with Stefan and Wieland. We made, this was a prototype for an interactive table for jewelry. Maybe in Corona times also quite interesting, because you don't have to touch anything. You just hold your hand over jewelry pieces.
It's enough if you come 2 meter close.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was fun. That was one of the last fairs that still happened, right?
That was the last publicly facing event that happened.
Yeah. I mean, we were quite lucky because Corona was already happening then, but nothing was closed yet. So they were lucky. The trade show was lucky too. So this was part of an exhibition about the future of retail, or for the jewelry business, right? We're talking about a industry which is not very tech savvy. So
the industry is not innovative at all. Actually, it's very traditional.
Well, this gives me the keyword. Thank you very much, you both. Thanks to Munich. It was great to see you. Hope soon in a beer garden near you again. But yeah, innovation is the keyword, which brings me to our next guest, Christopher Bauder, who undoubtedly has delivered quite some innovations to the scene. Hello, Christopher. Thank you very much for coming.
Sharing my screen, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that I have to introduce Christopher very much. Maybe you just start your presentation, and I will prepare some nice questions for you afterwards.
So, you can see my desktop, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hello, it's Christopher. I'm with the company, or I am the company White Void. We started about 15 years ago. And I mean, you can see all the glossy stuff on our website, but I was thinking maybe to show a little bit behind the scenes where I come from, and also how we get to do what we're doing. So I call it errors, bugs, and failures leading to success. That's basically what we do. So on our website, if you watch the movies and if you check the pictures and everything, looks all very smooth and easy and glossy and good, I hope. But behind the scenes, there's of course a lot of trouble going on. So I was thinking to share a little bit of that. This is basically where I came from when I was in art school here in Berlin. It's not that long ago, but I just choose this picture because I liked it. We came from screen and keyboard and the mouse, and I really did not like it. I can still not type with 10 fingers today. So I think that's a shitty interface, and the screen is very restrictive in terms, I can create these nice three-dimensional things in the computer and I have all these options, but how to get them out into the world. Here I had some pictures of my real desk at that time. So that's what it looked like. All that stuff, but everything kind of trapped in all those monitors and all those screens. And I felt I need to get this out into the physical world. Here, that's what the desktop looked like at that time, like everything very flat and edgy and Yeah. So what I wanted to do is kind of free the pixel and bring it into the physical world. And my idea was, okay, if a pixel is the smallest element of a picture, then in 3D, that would be like a three-dimensional picture, three-dimensional pixel, and it would create, I would be able to create three-dimensional shapes out of those pixels. But then the question was, okay, how to create those pixels and how to move them. And another element that I really liked to work with was light. I was always fascinated by light. Even as a kid, I collected candles and matchsticks under my bed, and my mom caught me, but I really couldn't resist those nice shiny things and fireworks and all that kind of stuff. So I still love light today, all kinds of light. So these two things together brought me to my first experiments in trying to build a kind of apparatus, a motor system that would allow me to move those three-dimensional pixels. So my idea was to have a small motor attached to the ceiling, and I would have this ball on that motor, and then a lot of those. And yeah, here you see how we are building the first prototypes in our office ourselves. Here, that was the cheapest 200-gram weight at that time. This cheap lemon juice that you can buy in a supermarket. It weighs 200 grams and it costs like, I don't know, 50 cents. So that was the cheapest weight we had for the first motor system to test them. That was our first software. Unfortunately, not TouchDesigner. We did it in V4 at that time. That was what the first control software looked like for our motors, for our light elements. And yeah, from there, you might have seen maybe some of our projects or products. We created a whole range of motor systems of different sizes with different kind of light elements. First balls, of course, and then bigger balls, and then more balls, then kind of crystal elements, tubes, horizontal tubes, tubes in 3D. Like big waves arrangements out of that, up to 200 meters long. Triangles, then obviously from 2-point to 3-point to multi-point circles. We worked with OLEDs for Philips for one project, which was very exciting because I think the OLED is the only light source that's very pretty, even when you turn it off. It's a mirror. So I really enjoyed working with OLEDs. I'm very sad that they never kind of made it as a household element. There's still kind of this underground thing. Some more indoor architectural lights, light bulbs. Well, of course, you can also move t-shirts if you want, all kinds of stuff. So whatever the clients like, we move it. And yeah, here's a more current version, more recent version of our software in TouchDesigner. So this is our control surface. At the moment, we are working on a very brand new version of it, like redoing basically everything based on what we learned over the years. So here you see our current but already old kind of interface with a cue list, and we have pattern generators, and we have a 3D visualization to be able to pre-program our shows before we actually bring them into reality, because most of the shows are pretty big and we don't have such a space to set them up before. So we need to simulate for a long time before we are able to see them in reality. And then I want to show one example. You just already saw the visualization. This is our software for the installation called Deep Web. This is an audiovisual live show that I'm playing together with Robert Henke, one of the inventors of Ableton Live, and also a great electronic musician and composer. And I wanted to show a little bit the process for such a project, how it comes to life. So here we have our first presentation. We did it as a proposal for the Fête de Lumière, the light festival in Lyon. So we did a small presentation. This was the space it was supposed to be in. We had some ideas for the arrangement, and we made some renderings what it could look like in the space. And also, if you see later the pictures, it got pretty close to that look actually. And yeah, some more visualizations, and tests, the systems we are using, lasers from a company from Berlin, our motor systems, of course, and then as a target for the lasers, we move balls filled with water. The water is for the refraction, because if we hit the ball from one side with the laser, we want an even light distribution all around. And then, of course, our control system in TouchDesigner. Here were some views of the arrangement, and here's some early tests that we did. Yeah, so that's kind of the way we work to visualize our ideas first. Then we do the development of the timeline. So this is basically at Robert Henke's home. He has these metal plates on the wall, and we use a lot of sketch paper and some printouts, and try to puzzle the show together with the elements that we wanted to do visually, plus what we would do on the sound level, and how we would kind of stitch this all together. And then we went into TouchDesigner already and basically punched out all those effects on the visual side, and Robert went into Ableton and started to sketch all the sound stuff. And yeah, so we had already a connection between Ableton and TouchDesigner going on at that moment, so we could basically test the audio side and the visual side at home. And then we also did a little test setup in we have this storage facility where we have our material. So we did a little setup if that really actually works to hit moving balls. You can see some of them, we're not hitting them here in that case. So that would not be good for the audience, because these are very powerful 30-watt lasers. So they're never allowed to hit a human eye. So we have to be really sure that we never miss the ball, and those balls are just 14 centimeters, and we have a distance of up to 22 meters, I think, to hit them with the laser beam. So it's a pretty small target, and it's moving. So we were pretty happy that we could actually achieve, also get rid of the delay in the system to an extent that this is possible. And there's many people trying to copy that already for years now and not really succeeding, because it's a crazy endeavor, and you need the laser producer, you need the people from the software, from all sides, from the network. You need you need everyone on their highest level of their game to really achieve this. Of course, you could use bigger balls, then maybe your chances are better to hit them. But it's quite complex, and we have 12 lasers going on here, and everything is moving with generated material in real time. So it means when Robert is changing stuff in the audio, we would already automatically change the visuals with it, which means we're not pre-rendering or anything. It's all generated in real time. So we have to be sure that we can hit all the moving targets at any time, and also in a safe way. So even if something would fail, that the laser beam would never glitch off the ball, or we would shut off the laser beam before that's happening, and all these kind of things. So it's a very complex thing. And this is the setup that we are having in Kraftwerk. Kraftwerk is a very big old power plant industrial space in Berlin. I think one of the most beautiful kind of industrial cathedrals, completely black, no natural windows, huge space, about 100 meters long, and 40 meters wide and 20 meters high. And even the installation is more than 30 meters long. It looks kind of small in this space. So here we see the whole crew experimenting on site and finalizing the show. And then, yeah, opening, and we let the audience in, and we play our first live shows. Yeah, and then that's what it looks like when everything is full on. And yeah, 12 lasers, 30 watt each, 180 balls, I think. We can move about 8 meters with a speed up to 0.5 meter per second. And yeah, we perform live performances, and we also show it as an exhibition. We repeated it this year in summer. No, not this year. Last year in summer. Now it is summer. So last year in summer, because not many people were able to see it the first time, and we were running it for a whole month, and we had about 50,000 visitors altogether. Yeah, so this is to give you an overview of what we do and how we do it, and a little bit behind the scenes. I hope I stayed within the time. Yeah, if you want to see more of it, you don't know where to find me or us. I'm Christopher Bauder. So christopherbauder.com or whitevoid.com for the company. And if you're interested in our motor systems, it's kinetic-lights.com. And of course, you also find me on the usual social media. And also one thing, my colleague from HR told me to say, if you're a talented touch designer guy or woman, especially women, we of course prefer to increase the amount of women. Also, unfortunately, here today, just 1 out of how many we are? 7. So more women to touch designer. If you're a touch designer person, you're looking for a job, we always have, we need good people. So give us a call or send us an email. So that's enough for advertisement, I think. So yeah.
Well, that was a very interesting presentation. It's nice to hear it firsthand. Something you said in the beginning was like this. There was this idea to get this stuff out from the screen into reality, and I have to say that I always use this installation right at the beginning when I give a touch designer class, because it shows perfectly how you A, take stuff from virtual space into reality, and B, the kind of technical solution where touch designer is really strong, right? You're connecting all those things into a playable thing. But what we see now is this whole Corona impact, no live things happening. There's all this run back into the virtual space, and now missing the kind of qualities that we got used to in the real space visualizations. Like I just recently saw a concert in Fortnite, which is always an interesting thought. And now they made the artist giant and look for all the things that you can't have in reality. Do you feel sometimes that you're also drawn into this, back into the virtual?
I mean, for me, it's kind of the opposite. I had a guest semester when I was studying in Chicago in 2001, and I was in the virtual reality class. So there it was. That was already the thought, the things we were trying to think ahead. And I was a strong believer in that we would attend concerts or go to the cinema or experience art pieces in virtual reality, and we would wear glasses and all that kind of stuff. But then over time, I mean, I love the virtual reality, but I love the real reality even more. And I think they should merge somehow more. I don't like this separation so much. And I really refuse at this moment to go back to the things being only virtual. I mean, I could maybe stream one of my shows, or I could try to recreate it in a virtual environment and invite avatars to watch it there. But I don't think it's the same kind of impact than being really physically there. And that's also why I don't record much of the shows, or I never stream the whole show, for example. I always refuse that, or I don't allow 360-degree video and things like that, because I think it's a kind of surrogate being there thing. Like, okay, I saw it, but it's not the same. And that's what people also always confirm when they see the actual piece, and they saw it. Of course, everyone saw it. I saw it on YouTube, but it's not the same experience on the emotional level, and that what you would achieve by showing it in virtual reality. This is of course not not true for other things, but for the particular art that I'm doing, which is related to light, and light has a very particular way it works on your body and on your perception. And of course, as you all guys all know from being in 3D and ray tracing and all these functionalities that the graphic cards try to emulate, how light refracts and how light reflects and so on, you know that this is the most complicated thing to simulate in virtual reality, and especially in real time. So gladly the reality is still ahead in that sense. So I still prefer to realize my pieces in actual reality. But of course, if simulation gets better, I might reconsider. But at this moment, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Oh, my time is up.
Kind of tell, also just from the photographs, even from your tests compared with the renderings, that the real photographs are so much nicer, and you can't really put the finger exactly on where it is nicer. Well, let's see if we have questions from the audience. I see Yves waving his hand. Was that a question?
No, the question was, we saw the deep web and the Kraftwerk, and it's fantastic. I was just wondering, what's your approach to the content of it? Are you more interested in geometric shape? Do you want to tell a story? What is your approach towards the visual side and the story?
Yeah, I always try to tell some kind of story, but of course, as you have experienced when you were there, it's very abstract. So it's probably hard to understand the story I tried to tell. But if you take some other story away from it, I'm also fine with that. So with Deep Web, we were about communication. So it starts like with one ball, like one person or one unity is communicating, but there's no answer. So you're alone. Then there's a second one, and you have a partner to communicate with. Then there's multiple ones, so you start to create a network. And we also used on the sound level, Robert used these artifacts from the phone, from modems dialing in up to modern communication. There was like stuff from Apollo landing on the moon and so on. I mean, this is our kind of fun, like inspiration and so on. But we are not really expecting that people kind of completely understand. And with the new piece, Scala, I tried even to get one step further by really trying to create emotion, for example. So we tried to find combinations of patterns of sound, of motion that would kind of evoke some kind of a feeling. Like you feel angry because it's very aggressive, or you feel happy because we show the sun and we play cheesy chords and stuff like that. So we always have a kind of stories and sub-stories and side stories, but mostly people don't realize it. But one time it was very funny. We played the first show I did was balloons. We had 64 balloons, also on motors, with sound, also with Robert. And after one of the show, an old woman came and she was very agitated. And she said, like, well, when the aliens landed and then they explored the Earth, and I loved that scene. And then in the end, they returned to their planet. And we were like, what? You got the story? That's unbelievable. And this was one of our little sub-stories that we had at that time. It was about birth and death and aliens landing and all kind of stuff, but she really got that. So that also told me that with very abstract means you can tell a little bit more complex stories, but I'm not really after that people really understand it. Understand it in a sense that we want to tell a story or give a message as a message, for example. We don't want to send any message. I rather want to send feelings or emotions. Yeah. If I create one or two or none, none I wouldn't be happy. But if I create one or two, then the piece works. So that's basically the idea behind most of the shows we're doing.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. I've seen Mickey raising his hand, but maybe we first ask...
Stefan, we can't hear you.
Oh. now I can hear myself at least. Yeah, I saw Mickey raise his hand, but maybe we should first ask the community communicators if there's any questions from YouTube or Twitch.
So the YouTube crowd today is really, really, really silent and no hype from YouTube. Shame on you, YouTube crowd. Some more hype, please, for this awesome presenters here.
Carlos, what do you say?
So, Twitch side, so only one guy asked, how was the quality of the OLED light and did you like it?
The quality, these were OLED lights made by Philips specifically for this installation. And well, I don't know if I can turn my screen. Actually, I have some of them still here. Can you see that? This light thing at the wall there, can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
So that these are still some of those OLEDs, and they were manufactured almost 10 years ago now. So the quality is really good of those lights, and there also almost no color fading or drifts or anything like that. So I was really happy actually with the quality of the OLED. I think the biggest obstacle of the OLED was the price, and still is. So, and they promised us that it would be super flexible and I could choose my own shape and it could be bendable and all these things that actually never really came true. When I asked Philips, can you make it as a triangle? That was already a huge problem. And after that, they refused to make any special shapes. So, but yeah, I still love the quality of the light. You can choose very precise color temperatures. And you can also grade them later. So if after many years they have a bit of a fade, you buy a new one and you attach it to the same installation, you can basically compensate for the loss of the light quality and so on. So I thought it's a great system. I'm really sad that it didn't kind of catch on somehow.
Yeah, maybe too much news, other stuff to be sold first before we can have this goodie.
So I think they have another question here. So if I doesn't have access to all this hardware, what is your approach for developing such big installations?
I didn't completely get that. If you don't have hardware, or
like if you don't have the hardware you do for making these big installations, what is your approach to develop them?
I mean, you don't need much hardware or complex stuff and so on. Like the first installation I was just talking about, where I used helium balloons and I attached them to little motors. I built it completely myself, and while I was still studying, and the installation was like 12 by 12 by 10 meters. And so you just have to think clever, you know, what kind of tools do you have and what can you do with them? You don't need to necessarily start with 12 lasers and 200 kinetic balls and all that kind of stuff. And also there's all kinds of tools that allow you to blow up things big. I always, when I was teaching at art school, I told my students it's the same effort to do a projection mapping on a shoebox or on a skyscraper. You know, you can start small and then you can scale it up. And that's also what I did with my installations. I started with small amounts and less small complexity. And if that works, you can always scale up. So I think also with a small budget, you can create installations of certain size. So yeah, start small and then grow slowly and steady.
All right, Mickey. Okay, Mickey, time for your question.
I didn't have a question. I think I was just scratching my beard. Sorry.
It's just okay. Scratching your beard. That's perfect because we're kind of at the end of time. Wieland, are you also just scratching your beard? And we have a
No. I'm actually raising my hand
Okay.
because after all this like design talk, I would like to know what made you switch from V4 to TouchDesigner. Maybe like, what was the reason for that?
Oh, that's actually a tricky question because the reason is not, this is a TouchDesigner forum, but I mean, I don't prefer one over the other, and we still do project with both. You know, like a friend of mine once said, the tool that you know the best is the best tool. So depending on what programmer you get, whatever is their tool is the best to use. So I had a okay guy for doing V4, and when he left to do his own things more, then I was looking for another guy. But at that time, it wasn't that popular and I couldn't find a high level person. And also I was looking for a permanent employee, and a lot of TouchDesigner people and also V4 people and mostly freelancer, as you know. So that was with the problem at that time. And also, of course, I knew Markus for a long time, and I was a big fan of TouchDesigner always, because I come from the VJ scene. And I wrote very early on, I did my own VJ software where I already could mix 3D elements. And while I was researching that, I found TouchDesigner and Greg's experiment in the same direction. And at some point, Markus visited us and had introduced TouchDesigner. And I found I really liked the way the user interface and all these things were less geeky than V4, at least at that point. And I really liked the easy, like what you said before, it's easy to get into it, and you learn by just using it. As not many obstacles. And then I started with Markus actually to do the first version of our control software. And then more and more people were catching on to TouchDesigner, also in Germany and in Berlin. And then, yeah, we started to build it together from there. So it was basically, if you sum it up, TouchDesigner gave the better service.
Ooh la la. Ooh la la. So with this nice words.
A compliment to Markus also, I think.
I thank you very much, Christopher, for these insights. And community out there, you heard he's looking for good people. So get in contact. And now we're gonna watch a film. It's a documentation of Scalar. Film up. here we are back in the TouchDesigner Roundtable Smoky Edition, and our next guest is Mickey van Olst. Hello, Mickey. I've already seen that many people are unhappy with the smoke, but I'm just enjoying it for a few seconds before you start your presentation. I couldn't ask you before, but why did you leave the studio and go back home? Okay, that's why I had a hard time to play it. So the dependencies probably. Oh, no sound on Twitch?
Yeah, on Twitch.
Okay. Okay, that was small talk now anyway. I think we have sound now. I'm looking forward to see your presentation.
All right, cool.
And
Let's
I'll
get started.
turn off the smoke.
Okay, are you seeing this?
Yes.
Cool. All right, so yeah, I overlooked the time a little bit. This presentation is probably a bit longer than we have time for, so I might skip a few things. But yeah, let's see how far we get. So yeah, my name is Mickey van Olst, and I am a Berlin-based freelancer. And yeah, there's a couple of studios here in Berlin and around, yeah, mostly Western Europe that I work with on interactive installations and generative visuals. So for instance, like What's Been Air and Informative, those are studios that I work with on a regular basis. And I'm originally from Amsterdam. Some of you guys might hear it from my voice, I don't know. And my background is mostly in new media arts. And also this is kind of the place where I got introduced initially to Arduino and Open Frameworks. And so it was like a study where it was very much focused on already like physical installations. And after a year in between at Stockholm to learn about art direction, I joined Informative. And this is also kind of the start of being in Berlin and kind of like working in the scene and yeah, working with all of the wonderful people that are kind of like part of this. And since 2017, I've been going freelance, kind of working with various places. But what I first kind of wanted to show was just some work that's not necessarily TouchDesigner related, but just to kind of give an idea about, yeah, like the things that I mostly have experience with and kind of like what my background is in terms of like professional work. And then I'll get into how I got into TouchDesigner and like what I'm using it for. So yeah, physical installations, that's mostly kind of like what people ask me for or know me for. So this is, for instance, a piece for Informative, where, if I kill the sounds, yep. I'm not the best with PowerPoint. Let's get this. Yeah. So this is great. Yeah. So like mainly kinetic sculptures and like things that have something to do with moving light or like moving motors. And for instance, this piece is a visual display that kind of works like a regular screen. So it like moves pixels physically upwards by shifting them one after another. And yeah, like within these kinds of projects, I'm kind of like a jack of all trades. It kind of goes anywhere from doing hardware and electronics to working on the concepting and design phase of things, and then also kind of like figuring out how to model it. Of course, working with many other great people on these kinds of things. This is a piece more recently done in Shenzhen in China for the Architectural Biennale, which sounds like a gang of killer bees. And each of these tiles are actually full-scale PCB plates. So like we literally designed the PCB to be the physical element itself that is the pixel. And let's see, this is a more recent piece also for What's Been Air, where I did the hardware, which is about artificial intelligence thinking about itself. A quick thing I just wanted to mention, and this is something that Christopher already kind of touched upon, is that a large part about installations is also like simulating things and kind of like communicating your idea to a client. And this means that you accidentally also kind of more or less turn into a 3D person or a 3D render person. So I spend a great deal of time kind of like modeling installations before actually building any of it, because like it's kind of expensive stuff to do, and often you really need to have a like a convincing simulation or artist renders that kind of like help you to pitch this idea. So TouchDesigner is something that I haven't been using for that long. I think I started using it about 2 years ago. Before that, I was mainly using open frameworks and also processing. And one of the things that really got me into it was this talk by Jessica Palmer, and she gave a talk about like how Python is such an important element in TouchDesigner. And I kind of realized, like, oh, wait a minute, I've been using Python quite a lot on Raspberry Pis and these kinds of things for all these installations. It's great if I can use this in a visual environment. So yeah. Okay. Then the first project where I was able to use this is in collaboration with Thijs Wiersteker, an artist from the Netherlands, where we visualized data coming out of a tree. So we had a whole bunch of sensors kind of like measuring the tree and how much health it had and how much water was going into it, and also like weather information and especially pollution. This was a project done in Chengdu in China, so it was quite interesting to kind of like get all these parameters and try to visualize and communicate somehow the emotional state or the healthiness state of this tree. And like here, TouchDesigner was just a really great help, because I just sort of like quickly noticed how easy it is to kind of like switch between these two worlds of like bringing in visual elements and then hooking them up to data in some kind of way. And just simply visually being able to distinguish all of this kind of stuff into something that becomes coherent. I'll have a video of this one on the end that you guys can take a look at. Then the more recent project I've done with Touch is something called for the Siemens Web Summit, together with Bauder, where it was also my first time kind of like using TouchDesigner with more like heavy use of GLSL. So everything here is like running on compute shaders, and like I'm using a couple of tricks here to scale up SOP animations. So for instance, like cloth animations that are then able to be looked at with a virtual camera in order to get all of the normals and all of the position data, and then scale that up to like a larger fabric, which is then displacing also in GLSL, which kind of really helps you to kind of scale up some of the things that might not be possible on that scale with SOPs. You can kind of like trick SOPs into becoming tops and then using those again within Topland. And for this, I kind of want to show a small example. Is this working? Yeah. So I'm currently working on reprogramming this project into something that is more for like general use, but it's an installation that like has a lot of things already built in. So for instance, people can record these sort of like short videos of themselves, and then everything happening within TouchDesigner includes also sending those videos to people themselves, and so they can open them on their smartphones and being able to share them, as well as sort of like gathering all of the client data and like having sort of a robust state system. And this is something that is actually quite important, and it's maybe not even something that I hear so much when people talk about TouchDesigner, but kind of the ability to program between different states and having a reliable setup that knows how to respond in different kinds of situations. So like understanding that if somebody's trying out an installation, what happens if, for instance, somebody else runs in front of it, or if people are walking around it, not actually using the installation, and making sure that it doesn't accidentally trigger. And going kind of like between all these different states, and also what happens if somebody just walks away from an installation while they're in the process of recording a video, for instance. And this is one of the things that I really felt like I learned a lot about during this project, like how to stress test things to make them more robust, and understanding that you need to kind of like not just imagine things in your head turning out in the way sort of like as if it's perfect, but really sort of like giving it the opportunity to let other people try it and see where things are failing. And quite often these are things that are just related to design choices. It's not even necessarily a bug or something like that. That's something where you just simply in your head think like, oh, people are going to respond in this kind of way, and then realizing that yeah, not everybody does exactly the same thing. Now, a project where I'm currently working on, I can't really show that much of, unfortunately. It's for the Humboldt Forum, together with Charlotte de Builder and Jan Bernstein. And yeah, just like Christopher, I also use TouchDesigner quite often in combination with hardware or motors. So in this case, I'm involved in doing all the electronics and sort of like all of the firmware and hardware that is needed to move this installation. And I can't really say all that much about it at the moment, but it's essentially going to be a series of 24 big columns that are being able to move and that have like contents moving with them. And this sort of also shows once again like how TouchDesigner is something where it's not even just about having it as a visual environment, but having this sort of like Swiss knife toolkit that you can use for many other different kinds of things. So for instance, with a project like this, when it involves like so many different pieces of hardware, I'm, thanks to TouchDesigner, able to debug many of the firmware in my code much quicker, just because I'm able to visualize some of the data coming out of it in TouchDesigner. And sort of like having this virtual interactive oscilloscope really kind of like shows some of the versatility that you can use with it. Now, here's a little sneak preview of what this is going to look like. And yeah, unfortunately, I can't really show much more, but it's going to hopefully be done by the end of the summer. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And yeah, there's a few other projects that I would love to show, but at the moment I can't. So instead, I'm going to show a couple of experiments. So for instance, these ones are images that I created using a sort of like slit scan method combined with 3D models and PBR. And this is also kind of like one of the things that I really like about TouchDesigner, how you're not necessarily yeah, like forced into a single way of like using a visual pipeline. Like you can just sort of like work in your 3D environment and get these things right, but then afterwards just completely turn them into a different direction just by going into 2D post effects, or even using those in combination with a 3D effect after a 2D post effect. So sort of like that switching between these different worlds and different parts of TouchDesigner is something that I really enjoy. Yeah, besides that, as said, like I'm trying to get more into GLSL and kind of really enjoying, especially the compute shader part, because it just feels so much closer to what you would normally do in, say, open frameworks or processing, where you can kind of like write classes and you can use constructs and objects in a similar way, where you don't necessarily have to think so much about the fact that it ends up in a texture buffer. And let's see, another thing that I really kind of enjoy with it as well is sort of the ability to reuse certain elements. So for example, some of the things that I ended up building for the Siemens project for this web summit, like this curl noise-based particle system, are completely usable in different ways where you would never be able to compare them with the software that it was initially built for. And sort of like that versatility is, yeah, something that I really enjoy. Now, lastly, I wanted to show you guys this one. It's a free download for iridescent material. And yeah, if anybody wants to have it, make sure you take a look at it. And the way that this works is by rendering out a cube map that looks with a camera in all directions and sort of like gives you this texture that then you can use in combination with the camera that you're looking at the object, out of which you can calculate the normal vector. And this normal vector then gives you sort of like the refracting point of that cube map. And just sort of like by pushing that with different kinds of color gradients, you can kind of like fake this iridescent behavior. And I think from my side, that is it already. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you, Mickey. It's really nice to see how versatile your work is. Guess you never get bored.
Thanks. Yeah, I always struggle very much with these kinds of talks because it's sort of like, I always feel like I'm coming off as somebody that's either very clever or very confused. Because it's, what I do really depends on the project. It's so project-based that it's very eclectic in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
It can be either like 1 week of PCB designs and working in Eagle and sketching out hardware to, I don't know, working with GLSL or, yeah.
But to me, it seems that you still find motivation in time to also have like self-declared challenges.
Yeah. I can show you the one that I'm currently very much involved with. If you guys ever thought about buying a plotter, just don't do it because it really takes up all your life. But they're tremendously fun to play with, and this has been sort of my lockdown toy of the times. And you can actually use them in combination with TouchDesigner as well. Like Matthew did an excellent job at creating a sort of pipeline for that. But it's not necessarily the best tool for it. I really enjoy working with Houdini at the moment, and like kind of like using Houdini as a way of generating all the geometry and the paths for it. But I'm sort of like feeling also like I'm developing more and more of a sort of holistic view of like these tools and how they interact with each other. And that it's not so much about going necessarily very deep into one specific tool, but knowing enough of which tool brings you which thing and like how that can benefit you.
So let's see if we have questions from the community. How is it, guys? Wieland, what do you say?
YouTube is still really silent today, so nothing new. Sorry. But love your work anyway, Mickey, at least from me.
Thanks.
Carlos, how's the Twitch crowd?
So yeah, on Twitch side, are you hooked with TouchDesigner, or are you coming back sometimes to open frameworks for some projects?
So it really depends. I think Open Frameworks' biggest sort of benefit is that it's something you can compile into an executable, and which means that it's something that you can use on Android and that you can use it. So for instance, like one of the things that I do quite a lot is I create branding and sort of like generative branding for brands, makes sense, where it generates artworks out of a specific piece of software that I built. And quite often, these are sort of tricky dances where you don't necessarily want to give a client all of your source code or all of your visual exploration. And then being able to package it into an executable and having that as a sort of like ready to go application means that in some cases I choose Open Frameworks just because I want to have more control over that part of the project. But in terms of like ease of workflow and like how quick I'm able to iterate on things, Open Frameworks just doesn't work for that.
Thank you, Mickey. I think that's it for Twitch right now.
I have the feeling that the community is already a bit tired after 1.5 months of screaming and community meetings. But it's fine, we're in time, and we're gonna watch this video by Thies Biersteker. I hope I pronounced this right. It's called Voices of Nature, and it's this piece Mickey's been talking about before, it's the tree. So thank you, Mickey, for coming around. Amazing projects. I'm really happy that you have your desk over there. Looking forward to see you there in more peaceful times. So let's start the film. Film up.
Yeah, I think I can't hear the sound, Stefan. Okay, jetzt ist er da, alles gut.
And we are back in the TouchDesigner Roundtable. Our next guest is Markus Heckmann from Derivative. And I'm very happy to see that Markus also caught fire. Not quite as pink as mine, but maybe I can... Okay, I think...
Wait.
No, I think that was me again. I'm a VJ.
Okay.
Like all this audio stuff is really making me desperate.
Not an audio.
And
Jay.
now the sound is double.
Yeah, well, mind blown by everything that I saw, hence head smoking. Anyway, and it kind of gets me to the thing. Well, first of all, it's amazing to see all the work out there. It's incredible what you guys do, and yeah, some of these things it's just under the radar. And I'm loving these streams here to get exposed a lot to the community, actually. Or sorry, maybe the other way around. I can take in a lot from the community now and see what you guys have been doing. It's really fantastic. So what we are also looking for a lot is when you're working on these things, like tell us in the forum perhaps, or wherever, like let us know a lot of the problems perhaps, or the challenges that you run in, because this informs to a certain degree also our decisions, what we are making or how we are making things, and which direction we take. It's a cooperative process between the community and us that makes TouchDesigner happen. So yeah, maybe I'll just talk a little bit. We just had a new release on the beginning of April, and one of the things that, hence my head is smoking, one of the things that we put out there was the ability to actually stream out of Touch into or to the web. Two things that make this possible now also for the non-commercial licenses is that we enabled the NDI out top to actually stream out of the non-commercials. And Jared Smith wrote a nice article on that, how to do this. And I'm just going to share my screen so you can see this. I think it's this one. Yes. Where do we go here? So if you go to derivative.ca to the community section, what you can find there is an article called "Broadcasting to Social Media from TouchDesigner." And the steps involved in this are a little bit different from the Mac side or the PC side. On the PC side, for the non-commercial licenses would be to install the NDI tools. And from there's this tool called Virtual Input. And the virtual input device kind of shows up as a webcam in streaming software like Zoom or anywhere, basically, Skype as well. And out of TouchDesigner, you just place an NDI out node. You have the source name, and then in the NDI tools, the virtual input, the NDI tool is called. There you can select this tool and then stream out, as I'm currently doing, like literally as simple as this. I'm getting my video camera into TouchDesigner, post-processing it with my NVIDIA Flow emitter, and then sending it out with NDI out, which is then being picked up by Zoom, or sorry, by the NDI virtual input, and which is then being recognized by Zoom or Skype or whatever as a webcam. So really simple process. The other thing that we included, and this is on the commercial or educational license level, is that the video stream out top actually has the possibility to send out an RTMP. While previously we had RTSP, now the possibility there is also to send out an RTMP stream, which makes it possible to stream directly to Twitch or YouTube or restream.io. So those were kind of the two major things that came out with this last release, and we are happy to see that a lot of the community is already using this quite a bit. A part of this, what was new in this release, smaller things, but still nicely important. There's the update to the TD Ableton package, which previously it was a little bit of a hassle having to go into the derivative TouchDesigner install folder, copy out remote scripts, or and move them into the Ableton folders. Ivan added in an install button, which does all of that for you automatically, and making it possible to control the whole thing from TouchDesigner and not having to do all this file moving around. The other thing that's which is coming next, there was something I finally got to work on to fix it up. We updated the Formata component, and then I got feedback on the forum that it doesn't work. And then I tested it, but it didn't work on the Uno or the Mega Arduino boards. And we spent some time, Rob Barrows and myself, to figure out what's actually going on there. And discovered that the serial that was eating up bytes, it would be receiving bytes, but not actually sending them all to the callback. Hence, the problems with actually, for this to work with the Uno or the Mega. Funnily enough, it never worked with the Mega, and most likely it never worked because of this serial that issue, which is now fixed. I'm super happy about this because now it is as simple as selecting the port, turning this to active, and the component gives you the list of all the pins as well as pin values for you to control or read. You get the you can control basically all the pin settings, what they should be, what they should act as, and get the pin values also as parameters. I just added a button to one of the analog pins, and you can take it from there. Also, what didn't work before, which is now working, is that all these settings are being saved into the component. And if you disconnect an Arduino and connect the same type of board to it, then the settings are being copied onto the board. So you don't have to reset up a board. You can switch them out quickly, etc. Yeah, the oops, where am I? Here I am. And lastly, something we wanted to talk about was been always inspired by the open office hours that Zach Lieberman used to do for, I'm not sure if he's still doing it. He started with this in 2016, and he would set certain amount of time per week or per month and talk to people. Like anybody could basically come to the open office, and something that's lifted from university where a teacher would open up the office, you could just go in and ask questions. And I really like this idea because it gives you an unfiltered problem solving time with the community. There is no filtering what you're going to talk about. It's literally, okay, if somebody has a question, then they come and you discuss it with them one-on-one. So it took us a couple of years, but finally, we have decided to do something which we are calling TouchDesigner in Session. And if you go to our website and just search for in session, then you're going to find the community post, TouchDesigner in Session, which explains the whole concept a little bit. We'll be basically streaming at a regular time session where a few of our staff and users that have submitted projects will talk about these projects, and we'll try to inform them on best practice or perhaps help with challenges that they have, or talk about what they think, how things might should or would work for them better. And how you can be part of this is by going to this community post. And then there is a registration form. And on the registration form, you fill out the topics, project description, questions, and a link to the project and asset files, and then submit it. And we're kind of trying to make a program, like perhaps stay in a certain topic for one of those streams. And then we'll get back to you and tell you what day we have chosen for you, basically, or where we can schedule you in. And the first one's already happening tomorrow at 2 p.m. Toronto time, which would be 8 p.m. Berlin time. And we had two submissions that we could fit in here, which are dealing mostly, it's nice. It's beginner and much more advanced packaged together on audio visualization and audio, now the word is gone. Basically audio related visual work in one on one side, visualizing audio on the other side, triggering animations or controlling animations from TD Ableton in Touch to audio. So yeah, that's happening tomorrow, 2 p.m. Toronto time, 8 p.m. Berlin. You should be able to find all the links on the TouchDesigner YouTube channel, youtube.com. Let's go there quickly. TouchDesigner. Oh, and there it's already. It's funny, I don't know where to find that stuff.
Yeah, I think you need to go to your videos on the left side, and then there's videos, and next to that should be live.
Oh, those are mine though. Wait, but if I type TouchDesigner,
Isabel's saying it's on the event page.
in session. Oh, it's on the event page as well. Good. Yeah, or you type TouchDesigner in session, and you can find the stream right there. Yeah, we're looking forward to having you there, and also looking forward to submissions actually to talk with your projects. Who'll be on the call depends literally on who or what projects we'll be talking about. I know for sure that tomorrow we'll have also Jared Smith join in, so should be very interesting. And yeah, I think that's it from Toronto for now.
That's an amazing offer, and it's great for Berliners, because usually 1st of May tomorrow we would have gone rioting, but because Corona we can't. So no, we've got
Yeah. This is a good this is a good place to riot. I guess.
Time to riot. So let's see what the community thinks about this concept, which I find amazing. We were thinking of doing something similar here at the Node Institute. People come by, discuss the projects, but I think that way it works much better, right? Because you have a much bigger reach, and yeah, there will be actual demand.
I think it's good to have like in the context of each community. I think this is really good. Like while we are doing this as well, I think it's as equally important for the community to do it on their side too. It's basically, yeah, it's what we're thinking as well. It puts a spotlight on a lot of simple problems, more complex problems, like the whole range we can discover like this a little bit more. So yeah, but please do that as well at the Node Institute.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the V4 community has something called the Patch Circle, and now they have the midweek patch therapy. I think it's a very interesting offering. Selbsthilfegruppe. That's what we
Selbsthilfegruppe. Very nice. I should also mention the graphics for this. By the way, we have asked Aurora, who already worked on our who also worked on the graphics for our TD Summit, and she has created the graphics for our TouchDesigner in session. So thank you very much for helping us with that as well.
Shouts to Aurora. What does the community want to know?
So here on YouTube we have one question, and it's where can we find the update? And I'm not 100% sure what he means, but maybe you can show the update process, Marcus.
Yeah, so it's you go to derivative.ca, and there is this Get It Now button, and you click on it, and then there's this download link, and you click on the download, and then it's downloading, and then you have to install it. The other way to find the download page would be out of TouchDesigner, actually. If you click on the up top, in the top right corner, this field, if there's an update available, it's either yellow or green. So if it's yellow, it means there's an experimental build. And if you're not working on something for a client, then go wild with the experimental. If you're working on client work, then maybe stay with the official. And an official build indicator would be green. And then you can click on it, and this should take you to the TouchDesigner derivative page, to the download page where you can get to it pretty directly. Now, something has changed on our website, is that you have to scroll down to actually get to the experimental downloads or previous builds, which would be under official downloads here.
Okay, so just a clarification by Woody, it is about the Fermata update you talked about. The question where to get the update was aimed for the Fermata update.
Okay, yes, I'll put that on the forum right away, because it's in a future build, but I'll post this right away into the forum. The forum has a Fermata discussion going on. I'll put it there right now. Yeah. Coming up, time machine.
Yeah, so here in Twitch, there's a question about if there's more information about the stream out, any tutorials or blogs or something about it, and also if TouchDesigner is compatible bringing in different kind of streaming at the same time, because browser of WebTop doesn't work with HTML5, or screen grab works, but it's a bit fumbly, and NDI screen converter work only for a single window.
Stream in. Yeah, well, there is a few options for streaming into TouchDesigner. But currently, it is just RTSP at the moment. The problem with RTMP is that you're basically, it's difficult legally to bring RTMP into an application because of the, you're not allowed to record RTMP streams, and TouchDesigner is inherently made to record stuff. So hence, this is right now the only one. There's other things in the work, but that's for a later day to come out. I'm trying to think of the screen grab, or how else to bring it in. Yeah. I often use capture hardware for that as well, but that doesn't really get streams. So, Stefan, you're working currently with the screen grab top as well, right?
Yeah, I'm using the screen grab top in TouchDesigner, and I don't find it that bad, to be honest. I mean, I don't know what really happens when you run like 60 frames per second video through it. But for this stream, it worked perfectly. No issues.
Yeah.
Also, maybe Spout could be an option.
Oh, Spout, yes.
In. They should get a few things in.
And just for the, just again, the article that explains the broadcasting to or out of TouchDesigner, that's you can find that on the community page under broadcasting to social media from TouchDesigner, which has a step-by-step instructions on this. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, with all these new things, I think we should soon start to have this video meetings in TouchDesigner and not in Zoom anymore. Maybe next time.
Yeah, totally. Let's do that.
Just gonna hack in here. One question unrelated to what you just talked about is about the engine comp, and I think one of the questions mainly is it commercial/pro only, or can it also be used in a non-commercial version?
You know what? I don't know. What I have to do is I have to go to the wiki and check. Docs.derivative. Wow. From here, it looks like it's available on all license levels. Yeah. That's what the wiki is saying.
Yeah, because when reading in the forum, or at least I think also on the Discord, some people are not 100% sure about if the problem is more somewhere in the direction of it not working properly, or if it's a problem of not working in the license model they're using.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, if there's problems, then it's not working properly. If there's any license restrictions, it would tell you that there's a license restriction to it. Yeah. And I just see that Greg is also mentioning there is also an article on the wiki on RTMP. So if you need to know more about streaming stuff, then also you can look for RTMP. And there's a whole article on that as well.
So do we have more questions? Maybe also from the people in the chat?
I have one. Wait, am I muted? No.
No, you're on.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so one thing that I was very curious about is, so in recent updates, we've got the NVIDIA Flow, and now with the latest one, NVIDIA Flex, which are both really cool things. But I was having a look at the GameWorks visual effects overview at NVIDIA, and it made me very curious if you guys are going to be doing anything with soft shadows and volumetric lighting and things like ambient occlusion. Like the whole sort of like suite of visual effects offers like really, really amazing lighting elements. And I'm just curious if that's something that you guys are working on.
Not that we're working on that at the moment. Those are things that are always on the radar, but need to be scheduled, timed, and see if it's possible. There is the major development that maybe is a precursor to a lot of these things is, and I just point to a form entry. Sometimes you find some information in the form. Malcolm is mentioning here that with us moving to Vulkan. So this is currently one thing that we're focusing on mainly. And a lot of the other stuff perhaps comes with the conclusion of that project.
Okay, yeah, I was just really curious kind of like what the decision process is around, you know, like choosing whether to implement this or that, and how, yeah, like a part of these tools kind of like ended up in TouchDesigner, but then maybe others were considered, for example.
There's sometimes it happens for funny reasons that things come to us and then it just happens very quickly. And I think with Flow and Flex, that's one of those cases where there was a lucky coincidence basically as well involved for this to happen so quickly.
You mean the Vincent Roger C++ chop, or?
No, not necessarily, but he definitely also gave a good direction on that. Yeah. just like a poke with a stick. Vincent was basically a big poke with a stick. Yeah.
So if there is no question, I'm going to ask the question. Maybe, I don't know. It's something, at least for me, because I hear the whole Vulkan a lot of the time. And is there at least a rough estimation, like an ETA, when we will see maybe a first prototype and maybe an experimental build of the whole transition to Vulkan? Or is it going to be sometimes or soon, as Microsoft would say?
Oh, I can quantify this. But basically, when it's done, if that helps. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's difficult to. It's a good undertaking, and there's very nice progress, but very hard to judge the to give at the moment ETA for that. Yeah.
You could go into politics, Marcus. You have the right answers right there.
Right? Yeah, totally.
Well, then, if you don't have any more questions, I would like to thank you very much for coming, making the far way every month.
Thanks again for having.
From the headquarters. And good luck for your first session tomorrow.
Yeah, hope to see a lot of you on the YouTube channel for that, please. Thanks.
And at the TouchDesigner Roundtable, we are visiting, saying hello to our next guest, David Brühl.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hello, David. A second.
Super. Should I start? Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. And well, you're sitting opposite of me like usual. Yeah, we invited David here because he's one of the founders of the Node Forum. There's a new edition of this forum coming up. It's carrying a heavy load with the coronavirus, as many meetups, meetings, and festivals do. And we're very curious what David can tell us about the next edition of the Node Forum, or what is the Node Forum.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for having me in this round. I have one suggestion for the next round. Maybe we can implement a sort of a virtual applause. It's so weird when somebody is over with the presentation. It's so silent. But that's just a side thing. Applause. It's so weird when somebody is over with the presentation. It's so silent. Yeah. But that's just a side thing. Applause. It's so weird when somebody is over with the presentation. It's so silent. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Now doing a lot of work with VVV and their community, so it's for me fantastic to be in the TouchDesigner Roundtable now, and doing a lot of work with VVV and their community, so it's for me fantastic to be in the TouchDesigner Roundtable now, and doing a lot of work with VVV and their community, so it's for me fantastic to be in the TouchDesigner Roundtable now, and doing a lot of work with VVV and their community, so it's for me fantastic to be in the TouchDesigner Roundtable now, and doing a lot of work with VVV and their communities. Yes, hello.
David, do you maybe have the stream running somewhere, because we get like major feedback?
That's weird. All right, give me a second.
Is that possible?
Is it over now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Everybody was like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah, that was intense.
Okay. Okay, so you didn't hear me at all, right?
No, we heard you, but 5 times.
That's really bad. Sorry about that, guys. Anyways, yeah, scroll down on my personal studio. I'm basically freelancing in the area where most of probably everybody online is working in as well. And I want to take this opportunity to jump briefly through a few maybe situations rather than talking about individual projects. And I think I have a similar idea as Christopher said in the beginning. Like, I studied media system design, and back then it was about pixels in the screen and a lot of web-based technologies that were emerging at that time, and there was Director and Flash out there. And then I had this fantastic moment where I met the people at Meso in Frankfurt. I'm coming from Frankfurt, now living in Berlin, working in Berlin, and this is where I met Stefan. And with the Meso people, who were actually back then, starting the VV project, I dived into doing more spatial design and spatial setup and thinking about more how we can, use pixels and use technology in order to create spatial experiences. So these are just images from research projects back then, working with robots and how to use them as narrators of stories in space, turning out to be exhibits on trade fairs here for BMW. There were a bunch of series about them, and just clicking through this, I did projection mappings, light installations, museum exhibits. Here's a salt mine in southern Germany that we, where we're doing all the installations. With Tamshik, I worked in 2017, and also with NSYNC a lot, who are based also in Frankfurt. So this is what I do with when I work commercially, always in different situations with different studios as a freelancer. And maybe diving into this project, because I think it's a very nice example of how I usually think about these projects. This was a booth for Fiesmann, which is a manufacturer of heating systems in Germany, at the trade fair in 2017. And in the center of this booth, we, with NSYNC, mainly working with NSYNC in this project, we were developing a show, basically a 10-minute show, where presenters were live on stage, trying to, in a sense, make the challenges in the process of the digitalization, making them somehow experienceable for an audience which is not easy to handle. And since everything is happening basically hidden nowadays when it comes to digitalization and software processes, of course, augmented reality comes into play. And so there's this idea of having a live TV studio basically as a stage in this booth. These are renderings from the first sketches and ideas. So the idea was to have a presenter table, and then we did prototypes of how we can achieve this. This was a VV only project back then, yeah. And the tests how to do it. And in the end, I'm gonna just jump into the movie here. Can run a little bit. In the end, I think the most interesting part here for me is beside all the technology and
together into a new century. My name is Stefan Hoffmann, and in the coming minutes I want to take you on a journey on how we can use digitalization together to make your work more efficient and thus make our joint industry future-proof.
Aspects in designing these kind of projects is that you have to think about the people who are actually transporting the content through their presence on stage or their presence at the booth. So a big part of this project was actually to work with them during the script. Yes?
You must make the video a bit less loud.
I'm not hearing it at all. I can skip through it, maybe. Hang on.
So if the video sound plays, it's much louder than you.
Okay. I can jump through images here, maybe a little bit. Yeah, I mean, beside doing augmented reality stage designs here, we did it a couple of times in different scenarios and for different clients. And before all that happened, I was also working with theater groups and performing artists and did a lot of video stage designs and so on. And why I'm telling all this is basically because it gives the background how Node popped up through the history. And I think, and this goes also maybe to what Christopher said earlier, when you're choosing a software, it has obviously a lot to do with you use the tool that you know best, and why do you know a tool best has often to do with which people you meet, right, and which people you can work with. So in my case, it was the VVV people, and there were a lot of stuff happening that were live on stage, and this is some shots which I got from Meso, and they were also doing this in 1998. Back then with projectors, there were no LEDs on stage. And through their experiences in failing, and it's again sort of the same story, like from failures you learn a lot, and from failing doing these things with textual-based real-time programming, they developed the software VVV. And this is a screenshot of a very early version. When they decided to publish it, they were, of course, people starting to use it mainly from the visual art scene, like VJs mainly back then, and then user base grew up and grew it. And when I joined their team in 2006, there was somehow this need that everybody should meet in person, and and that's when we decided to invite them basically and have a festival for us, and that was in 2008. And we called this festival Node, since it made a lot of sense name-wise: patching with nodes, programming with nodes, being a node for a network, being a node in this network. So this is what we did, and then the community came in, and we had, let's say, 300, 400 people flying into Frankfurt, and we were giving workshops, and it was from the beginning on a one-week event where everybody met, sort of something like you guys experienced probably at the TouchDesigner Summit, but a bit earlier, I guess, in 2008 for the first time. And I mean, it was natural to develop also an exhibition, because everybody had to showcase something. Here's data visualizations of community members, visuals, of course. And then we invited a bunch of interesting positions and put together the very first symposium, which was an eye-opener for us as a community, to invite people that are not connected to our inner community, but also work in the field, and this since many years. This is Herbert Franke, a science fiction author and a very early computer digital art pioneer. And the eye-opener was basically, now that we can do, generative design and, develop and experience the aesthetics which comes out of algorithms and mathematics is obviously not something new. It's just that you can do it, because we have the computers and the graphics cards nowadays. So we were talking about these issues, and yeah, over the years we did a couple of festivals in the meantime, and a game changer was then the edition after that in 2010. We decided very early to work with partners that have their own audience, not in the particular field of technology based, but more in an artistic and art field. So this is the Frankfurter Kunstverein, and through that we were developing an exhibition and gave ourselves more like the challenge to think about a topic and talk about topics and talk about how we can go further and what the role of design and technology is for our society and so on. So we were doing this from then on to have a theme for each of the festival editions, and through that our whole festival experience changed a lot. So we had not only digital art positions, we also had photo exhibits that were, dealing with this. We were mixing media art position with photographic works, but also here, this is also not anything that is done with a computer. It's just done by a rule system, John Powers. And in the middle of all these exhibitions, we ran our workshops. And you have to imagine now it consists of, let's say, 50 workshops in 1 week. That's a crazy amount of knowledge transfer that's happening. So we have, each day we have 5, 6, 7 rooms parallel with like 30 people learning. Here we were working with dancers and developed pieces and so on. I'm skipping a bit through, it takes too long. And then in 2017, we switched again and found new partners because everything was growing and we needed more space and we got more professional. And yeah, I mean, this is Node as a festival. And this year, we are doing it again. Skipping through a few photos here. This is Robert Henke. We had this name before today. And this year is a bit different, and I take this year as basically as a challenge because there's a few things happening. The one thing that is obviously there, that we have to find ways to connect the people that are not allowed or cannot travel to Frankfurt. But at the same time, this is not only an issue to Corona, it's also an issue of thinking of our ecological change and how we, should we really like travel all over the globe for a conference of a few days. So I think there's a big change in the way we as festival producers and people in the scene should think about this. So this year Node will be something that is a hybrid form between having a stage that serves as a TV studio, something like you've seen before in the project. That's why I picked it, and an online audience. So we're gonna have a huge list of webinars that we're gonna run. And that's not possible to stick that into 1 week. So the whole festival experience changes. And this is where the Node Institute comes into play. And luckily, I met Stefan a while ago. And together we decided that we have such great communities that we know and that we were part of. And this is the general idea, to sustain basically what we do as a festival and bring it into, before we say, a linear spread. And, basically have it all over the year and bring together the community and bring together the workshops and webinars that we need to come further. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the story I have to tell. This is a shot of the Institute in Berlin, so the actual space. But the platform we're developing at the moment is more and more an online platform, and we're totally going onto e-learning. I think that's a sense of zeitgeist, and it's time for doing this and rethinking how we as festivals and conference should act. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to share and tell you. Maybe Stefan, you can guide me through some questions that are interesting to know in particular.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
The TouchDesigner community, I think, is interested on how we can contribute to the Node Forum edition this year. Is it only for V4 people, or are you going to open the scope? Or?
Well, we're working independent. I mean, even our grassroots is the VVV community. That's a very clear story behind that. But the Node Association that we founded for doing this is an independent group, and we are super deeply connected by heart and in person with people behind it. But at the same time, I think it is absolutely not necessary for communities to build fences, and I think the other way around. I think that we can learn a lot from each other, and that it is super interesting for people. I can at least say that for the VVV world, it is super interesting how people are working with TouchDesigner and what is inside the box there, and learn from each other and share across tools and be open as a community, and also be a diverse community of people. So yes, there will be TouchDesigner workshops, and there will also be Unity workshops and other technologies around. Yeah, I mean, this is what it is. If you guys come up with suggestions, we're super open to know about them. Just ping us on our website. Maybe I can show quickly the website. That's the Node website here, and I mean, if you click through it, you're gonna see, like, this is the festival edition of 2017. And here, for example, on the professional program, you see basically what happened in 2000. This is all the workshops. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And if you look for the Vimeo channel, there's also a lot of documentation of all the talks. And every workshop is basically captured. It's not on Vimeo, it's on YouTube then, but you're gonna find it out. Yeah, I think that's basically it. Yeah.
But from what I understand, you're also working on something brand new, which is not quite right to be showing, but maybe you want to give us a peek.
You mean the website you and me are working on? Yes. Yes, of course. I mean, this is the festival website, and the Institute will get its own website, and this is what it looks at the moment. It's not released yet, but generally saying it's going to be an e-learning platform where you guys can connect to, where you guys can put in webinars, where you guys can create e-learning courses. So this is basically a community hub with a membership system in the end. And if things are going smoothly, then this should be, at least in the final version, released right to the festival. This is the plan. I hope this works out. But like a soft start of the websites coming in the next weeks, we hope. So we can actually start doing our webinars over the platform. But the complete set of features will be there for Node, which is happening in October. Maybe not mentioned that. It's announced here. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds super exciting. I'm happy to be part of the Node Institute, and our final move to move what we started here in the real place into the virtual realm, and then hopefully have both layers again, the meeting person to person and the global reach of the online meetings and the workshops. I think the community is super excited to be able to take part in the Node Forum. And yeah, let's hear what the rest of our
Is there questions?
here says.
It's interesting.
So, do you know the Node Forum? How many people of you have been to the Node Forum before?
Nobody.
Was that smoke a yes or?
I was there to show this first installation that I had in the slides. True, false.
Cool. Yeah, for me it's going to be the first time. But I'm already excited.
And maybe, Stefan, I sent you this little video. Maybe you can play back the video. And I chose this video because it's only 2 minutes long, or not even. And it's sort of, for me, it is a good video because it transports basically the spirit that we have, that we have there. And yeah, maybe you can just play back.
Yeah, I will happy to do so, but I would do this to close off the evening.
Haha, I see.
So please allow me to thank everybody who was watching. Everybody was coming here, taking the time to hang out with us. We're going to be back in 1 month. It's going to be the 10th edition. Time flies. And again, I would be very happy for any proposal what you would like to present at the roundtable, or yeah, whatever comes to your mind concerning this format. This is not a closed circle. This is like an open format, and we're very much looking forward to hear from you. You heard it. We're also looking very much forward for non-male, non-white people to contact us to represent the diversity of the scene. So please get in touch. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice evening, and see you in a month or tomorrow.
Thank you, Stefan. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stefan.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Stefan, play it to the end.
Yeah. Just have to get rid of the scene here.
Bist du denn da eigentlich, David? Bist du bei dir zu Hause?
Ich bin bei mir zu Hause, ja. Ist der gesamte ASCII-Code also das ASCII stimmt mit Unicode. Alle Unicode-Zeichen. Was sehen wir da, Stefan? Das ist das falsche Video.
Wir sehen nochmal den Bau.
Das hier? Warte mal kurz. Ein bisschen viele Fenster hier on screen.
I just see smoke.
Wait, that was wrong. So.
No.
Are we still online? Can people still hear us?
All right.
So. Yeah,
I think Thijs is very happy tonight with all this free promotion.
You have to play it. Oh yeah.
Node is a very special event in Frankfurt. There's a lot of conferences and master classes and workshops and consultants, and it goes on, which have something to do with the future of digital media.
Why do I trust in Node? Because it's good people here.
In this really smiling, nice community.
All the people nerding around.
It's a great festival. Just look around and meet some people and have fun.
Here is a great mix of people where all these different fields intermingle, and become fruitful for argument.
I learn most about what is possible with the software, which in itself, this cosmos of what's being done with VVV is so fascinating. The symposium focuses on social and political issues, how rules shape the way in which we live in society. We will be presenting a number of artists who, in their artistic work, try to bend, break, and kind of criticize those rule systems.
Some of the works are really what you would expect at a media art festival, and other works are amazingly analog.
So we have 100 different people of different disciplines, all connecting to one master node, all melding together and making one audio-visual experience of the future.
I think if you start with something positive comes back, and that's a great thing to see. Yeah.
It's a great festival. People are cool, and we learn so many stuff. Make parties.